What if everything you were taught about humanity's origin was wrong? Not just incomplete, but deliberately hidden from you for over 5,000 years. Buried beneath the sands of modern-day Iraq lie hundreds of thousands of clay tablets, pressed with strange wedge-shaped symbols by a civilization that existed before the pharaohs, before the Greeks, before the Bible was ever written. For over a century, scholars have struggled to decode them, piecing together fragments, guessing at meanings, working through a writing system so complex that fewer than a few hundred people on Earth can read it fluently. But in 2023, everything changed. Researchers at Ariel University and Tel Aviv University unleashed advanced AI neural networks on these ancient texts, and what the machines found sent shockwaves through the academic world. Patterns emerged that no human eye had ever caught. Messages that had been silent for 4,000 years suddenly began to speak. And what they said about humanity's origins, our purpose, and our future is deeply unsettling. This is the story of the Sumerian tablets, the Anunnaki, and what artificial intelligence has finally revealed about who we really are. To understand why these revelations are only surfacing now, you need to appreciate just how difficult cuneiform is. It's not like reading Latin or even Egyptian hieroglyphics. Cuneiform, which literally means wedge-shaped in Latin, is one of the oldest writing systems ever created, dating back to around 3,400 BCE in ancient Sumer, a region in southern Mesopotamia. The system contains over 1,000 unique characters. But here's the real problem. A single symbol can mean completely different things depending on context. One wedge mark might represent a sound, a word, or an entire concept, and the rules shift depending on whether you're reading Sumerian, Akkadian, or Babylonian. For over a century, teams of archaeologists have painstakingly translated fragments by hand. But with an estimated 500,000 tablets sitting in museums around the world, and only a tiny fraction ever translated, most of these ancient records remained locked in silence. Then came the AI breakthrough. In 2023, a team led by Professor Shay Gordon developed a neural machine translation model specifically trained on cuneiform. They fed it thousands of digitized texts from the open richly annotated cuneiform corpus and taught the model to translate both transliterated text and raw Unicode cuneiform symbols directly into English. The results were remarkable. The AI achieved translation accuracy scores that rivaled experienced human scholars, and it could do in seconds what used to take experts months. Another researcher built the AICC, a corpus of over 130,000 cuneiform texts translated using a custom-trained large language model, the largest collection of translated cuneiform in existence. But the real shock wasn't the speed of translation. It was what the translations actually said. When the AI began cross-referencing tablets from different archaeological sites, tablets separated by hundreds of miles and sometimes centuries, it found something astonishing. Recurring patterns, repeated phrases, and consistent narratives that no individual scholar had ever noticed before. These weren't random poems or disconnected myths. They were structured records describing labor systems, social classifications, and creation procedures involving blood, clay, and divine engineering. Multiple origin stories emerged, but not in the way we're used to thinking about creation myths. The tablets didn't describe a single moment of divine creation. Instead, they described humanity as a project, one that was designed, tested, revised, and deployed in stages. Different batches of humans were created with different traits, assigned different roles, and given different levels of autonomy. Some were made for obedience, others were made for thought. And the beings who allegedly carried out this project, the Anunnaki, a group of powerful deities described across Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, and Babylonian texts as the offspring of the sky god An and the earth goddess Kai. In the earliest inscriptions dating to around 2100 BCE, they appear as the most powerful figures in the Sumerian pantheon, responsible for decreeing the fates of humanity. Here is where the story gets deeply uncomfortable. The tablets don't just describe creation, they describe engineering. According to the AI-enhanced translations, humans were not made in a single act. They were created in stages, trials, failed experiments, and revised prototypes, each tailored to specific functions. Different Sumerian words used for human were long assumed to be synonyms, but the AI flagged critical differences. The term Lulu loosely translates to man, but Saggig, meaning black-headed people, appears linked to a specific group marked for toil, described as being molded from dark clay with, and I quote from the translation, eyes that do not question. Other phrases recur across tablets from completely different sites. Function bearing life. Those who do not multiply. Clay of lower glow. That last phrase is particularly chilling. It may indicate humans who were engineered to be unable to reproduce, designed as a temporary workforce that could be discarded and replaced. The Sumerian creation myth of Enki and Ninmah confirms this pattern. In the myth, the god Enki and the mother goddess create humans from clay to relieve the lesser gods, the Agigi, from their backbreaking labor of digging canals. But the process isn't clean. During a drunken contest, Enki and Ninmah create several flawed humans, beings with stiff hands, beings who cannot hold tools, beings with various disabilities. The gods then assign each one a role in society, embedding inequality into the very act of creation. The tablets go further. They describe a systematic evaluation process in which the gods judged each group of created humans based on performance. Those labeled clay of restless voice, the disobedient ones, were cast into rivers. Groups whose bodies were too weak to bear tools were sent back into the mountain to be forgotten. This testing supposedly took place in a location the tablets call Aiden, a flatland described as sitting between two rivers. It functioned, according to the AI analysis, as something resembling a factory floor for human production. Groups were named, evaluated, and sometimes erased entirely. The parallels to modern industrial processes are unsettling. Quality control applied to conscious beings. But the system had a fatal flaw. These early humans couldn't reproduce on their own. Every new generation had to be physically crafted by the gods from clay and divine command. The gods maintained total control, but the process was unsustainable. Rebellion among the human workforce, high mortality rates, and sheer production inefficiency forced a radical design change. Enter Enki's masterpiece, Adapa. According to the tablets, Adapa was a fundamentally new type of human, smarter, stronger, capable of reasoning, speaking with authority, and most importantly, able to reproduce. He is described as chief among men, possessing divine sight and the ability to understand the will of the gods. But Adapa came with a catch. When the supreme sky god Anu summoned him to heaven, Enki warned Adapa not to eat or drink the food of eternal life that would be offered to him. Adapa obeyed his creator, and in doing so, sealed mortality for all of humanity forever. He gained knowledge and autonomy, but never immortality. This single moment, described across multiple tablet versions, represents perhaps the most consequential event in the Sumerian understanding of human history. We were upgraded from obedient tools into thinking, feeling, reproducing beings. But we were also deliberately locked out of the one thing that would make us equal to our creators: eternal life. Adapa's creation didn't just change humanity, it split the gods themselves. The tablets describe a bitter conflict between two divine factions. On one side stood Enki, the god of wisdom and fresh waters, who favored growth, autonomy, and the advancement of humankind. On the other stood Enlil, the chief god of the pantheon and god of air and wind, who demanded order, obedience, and strict control. Enlil viewed autonomous humans as a direct threat. According to the Babylonian flood narrative known as Atrahasis, Enlil sent plagues and famines to cull the growing human population. When those measures failed, he resolved to unleash a catastrophic flood to wipe humanity out entirely. Enki's followers, meanwhile, shared knowledge with their favored human groups: the secrets of writing, agriculture, metallurgy, and astronomical observation. Enlil's faction suppressed certain populations, keeping them in servitude and denying them access to cultural advancement. The result was a world in which some humans became keepers of grain and makers of laws, while others lived without even names, erased from history at birth. This wasn't inequality that evolved naturally over centuries. If the tablets are to be believed, it was designed from the beginning. The conflict between Enki and Enlil reached its climax in the story of the Great Flood, a narrative that predates the biblical account of Noah by well over 1,000 years. Enlil, frustrated beyond measure by humanity's noise and rebellion, convinced the divine council to unleash a deluge that would destroy everything. But Enki intervened. He warned a faithful man, known as Ziusudra in Sumerian texts, Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and later echoed in the figure of Noah, to build a great vessel and preserve the seed of life. The flood came and devastated the world. When the waters finally receded, Enlil was furious that anyone had survived. But ultimately, the gods accepted the new reality, and in exchange for humanity's survival, Enki and the Mother Goddess established methods to control human population, including the creation of infertile women and classes of priestesses who would bear no children. The flood wasn't just a punishment. It was a reset, a controlled demolition of a failed experiment. And the world that emerged afterward was carefully restructured with new systems of control firmly in place. Beyond the creation and flood narratives, the AI translations revealed something equally provocative. Passages that read less like mythology and more like technical documentation. Some tablets describe flight vehicles with wings of wood and metal, powered by an internal fire. Others describe metals reacting to extreme heat in ways suggesting advanced metallurgy. Still, others reference concentrated energy sources described as things that turn day into fire. For decades, mainstream scholars dismissed these passages as poetic metaphor. But when AI analyzed them across hundreds of tablets, a consistent pattern emerged. Repeated references to wings, heat chambers, propulsion mechanisms, and concussive force. These weren't random flights of imagination. They were descriptions of specific components, repeated with the kind of consistency you'd expect from technical records, not poetry. Perhaps most disturbing, the tablets indicate this knowledge was distributed selectively. Some groups received advanced tools and understanding. Others were denied even basic literacy. The implications are staggering. A civilization stratified not just by wealth or birth, but by deliberate top-down control of information itself. The Sumerians were extraordinary astronomers. Without telescopes or modern mathematics, they tracked eclipses, planetary movements, and stellar alignments with remarkable precision. But according to the tablets, they weren't just observing the sky for scientific curiosity. They were watching for something specific: the return of Nibiru. Nibiru is described in the texts as a celestial body on a massive 3,600-year orbit. It's called the Crossing, the Destroyer, and the one who veils the light. Each time Nibiru approaches, according to the Sumerian records, civilization as we know it is wiped clean. Knowledge is lost. Societies collapse. Humanity forgets what it once knew and is forced to start again from scratch. Only a select group, watchers, chosen by Enki, were entrusted with preserving knowledge through these cycles, encoding it in stories, symbols, and hidden texts designed to be decoded by future generations. The tablets themselves may be part of this preservation system. Messages in bottles, launched across an ocean of time, waiting for someone, or something, intelligent enough to read them. One of the most disturbing patterns the AI uncovered was a systematic classification of humans into distinct groups, each with assigned traits, roles, and strict limitations. The clay of strength were miners and laborers, designed for physical work with no access to leadership or language. The blood of brightness formed a priestly class responsible for writing, chanting, and tracking the stars, the custodians of sacred knowledge. The shadow-formed ones kept animals but were forbidden from entering temples or handling sacred tools. Physical descriptions accompanied each classification. Some groups are described with imagery suggesting exposure to sun and earth, others as pale dwellers of stone and wind, still others as walkers of red, waterless soil. Language, personal names, and astronomical knowledge were granted selectively, reinforcing rigid social boundaries that, according to the tablets, were not the product of human history, but were embedded at the moment of creation itself. If the AI's pattern recognition is accurate, human social stratification, the division of people into rulers and servants, thinkers and laborers, the privileged and the forgotten, may not be something we invented. It may be something we inherited. For millennia, these tablets were fragmented, scattered across museums on different continents, written in dialects that even specialists couldn't fully reconcile. No single human mind could hold all the pieces at once. But AI can. Machine learning models can cross-reference thousands of texts simultaneously, identify patterns across dialects, reconstruct damaged passages, and flag connections that would take a human scholar a lifetime to notice. In March 2025, researchers at Cornell and Tel Aviv University unveiled ProtoSnap, an AI system that can read photographs of clay tablets and automatically identify cuneiform characters, even rare or badly damaged ones, with unprecedented accuracy. The technology is accelerating at a pace that suggests we're only at the beginning of what these tablets will reveal. But the deeper question remains: who was this information meant for? Why was it encoded so carefully? And why is it only now, in the age of artificial intelligence, that the full picture is finally becoming visible? Some researchers argue these are simply the symbolic myths of an ancient culture. Others believe they contain encoded memories of real events so old, so fundamental, that they were pressed into clay precisely so they would survive long enough to be found. Let's step back and consider what the Sumerian tablets, enhanced by AI, are actually telling us. They describe a history in which humanity was not born free, but manufactured for a purpose. A history in which our divisions, by race, by class, by access to knowledge, were not accidents of evolution but features of a design. A history in which the beings who created us disagreed about our future, and that disagreement fractured both heaven and earth. They describe a cosmos in which catastrophic resets occur on a cycle, wiping civilizations and erasing collective memory. And they describe a small group of guardians tasked with preserving knowledge through those dark ages, knowledge that we may only now be recovering. Whether you interpret these texts as mythology, allegory, or suppressed history, one thing is undeniable. They force us to ask uncomfortable questions. What if inequality isn't a failure of civilization, but a feature of it? What if the knowledge we've lost is more important than the knowledge we've gained? And what if the cycle the Sumerians warned about hasn't ended? The clay has spoken. The machines have listened. Now, the question is, will we? If this video made you see history differently, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below. What part of the Sumerian story disturbed you the most? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And stay tuned, because what the tablets reveal next may be even more terrifying than what we've uncovered so far.